Fourth-ranked Ineos Team UK in the first sudden death semi-final. The second semi, Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli team against Patriot from the New York Yacht Club. Both winners will meet in the Christmas race final. To take you through this first ever Christmas race, two men that definitely know their jibs from their main sheets. America's Cup sailors Kenny Reid and Nathan Outeridge. And Kenny, a last chance for the challengers to size up the defender and vice versa.
Well, with the World Series over, you could hear the collective sigh of relief from the Italian and American compounds. They are, in fact, competitive with the defending Kiwis. For the British, maybe it's more of a holding of the breath, but I digress. Today's another day. Another chance to win a regatta. Another chance just to win a race. And that's how these competitors think.
First up, it's Emirates Team New Zealand against Ineos Team UK.
So didn't make it across the bow. Typically in that situation we would have seen a dial-up, but once Ben committed to come up and go above Emirates Team New Zealand, Peter really couldn't make another adjustment, and with those foils hanging so far out the side of the boat, the last thing you want to do is have the boats come together.
Clock's ticked down to 0. It is race on. Both yachts struggling to get across the start line.
Well, both boats obviously very late there. Ben Ainsley got caught too low in the start box and didn't even lay the lure down to the line, and now it looks like this tack, they've fallen off the foils. And now you can see the lead's already stretched out to 500 metres after one tack in the race.
Oh, just hard to... So far, the Kiwis have been flawless. They had a couple marginal times where they were barely getting up, maybe in the pre-start, but since then, the package on this boat, the package of hydro and aero and systems, is clearly working better than the package on board the British boat. It's that simple.
This is the umpires, GBR. You have a second penalty for boundary violation.
These guys are getting some boundary penalties there.
That's not a little bit out of bounds. That's a long way out of bounds, guys.
I've never seen anything like that before in our America's Cup career. Obviously, they're not even trying to stay in the race course. Does that make it more egregious, or is a penalty a penalty? Surely, I've never seen a boat just ignore the outside edge of the race course like this before. Have you?
Kenny, they're not actually making any real progress. They're basically just mowing the same bit of lawn over and over again. I mean, just so hard to watch them trying to foil. They're at, at least 90 degrees. I think they need maybe 19 or 20 knots of boat speed to finally get going, and they're searching and searching and searching and not going anywhere. I think Ben Ainsley's doing pretty well to keep his cool.
Nathan, there's a danger of getting lapped here right now because the other boat just isn't getting out of the water.
It's not looking good, is it, for the Ineos Team UK and Ben Ainsley? He knows that they are struggling in this light air, and look at him, top of the course there. It's not even close at the moment to getting up on the foil. Meanwhile, Team New Zealand are sailing clean and polished. You'd think it's plenty of breeze looking at one of these boats, and this wind range that they've had to sail for, is 6.5 to low 20s, and this is very typical of March sailing conditions, and that's why Emirates Team New Zealand are trying to make the most of this sailing.
The course has been rechanged to a 4-leg race, so Emirates Team New Zealand on their penultimate leg, 3 of 4 now. It started out at 6, it is now 4.
This is a whole new world, and look at how deep that sail gets as they go into the tack. So they're changing camber all the time.
They stick this tack and go around the top mark. They're going to be potentially at the bottom mark before Ineos Team UK even reaches the top mark. Oh, it's light though, isn't it? They didn't pull that foiling tack off. But they've still got speed and flow on the foil.
The lift
and
in the back end of the boat, you see that, but look at, he's heading actually back towards the mark in order just to try to keep the thing going fast enough to get that foil to work.
He's just bearing away or pointing up to find the most amount of power. And once you find that power...
Look how deep that sail is, though, in order to find the power.
The mainsail and the jib, super deep.
You ever think about a jibe out here, Pete? I think your tech's not much worse at that. I think we'd still jibe okay in this, but you're cool.
But this penultimate gate entry by Emirates Team New Zealand has seen them splash down.
I think they're just going to try to get through this gate manually and as a displacement boat, and then they'll find that long width of the racetrack like we saw Nathan yesterday. They might even jibe around and head back out again and try to build. They need to build on to the long side of the track, of this skinny track.
I found it interesting, helmsman Peter Burling looking behind him. I don't know what he was looking behind him for, because he wasn't under any threat from any else Team UK.
So both boats doing around 10 knots, one heading upwind, one heading downwind. And, you know, it seems like after what we've watched the first 3 days of competition here so far, that they need about 17, 18 knots of boat speeds to get flying.
So the weather gods strike and the puff is taken out of Emirates Team New Zealand's and Ineos Team UK's sails. We'll take a break and be back with the action soon. Finally made the top mark, while Emirates Team New Zealand are attempting to get up onto their fours to complete this now shortened race on 4 legs.
Not a super happy looking team that
Talked about this time and time again. The Code Zero is what it's a hybrid spinnaker. It's a bigger sail that you'd put up that's bigger than the jib. And why none of these teams pulling them out from downstairs and hoisting them and getting up on the foil?
Okay, so I've been sitting here typing frantically to a couple of my sailmaking friends exactly the same question, and I'm confused. And you know, they're all worried about carrying extra weight and carrying drag and carrying windage, but what's worse than this? So why not carry it on board the boat and hoist it downwind right now and take off and take it down at the leeward mark if you need to? Some of these teams have practiced going upwind with the Code Zeros, and it can't be worse than this.
Jimmy Spittle was asked that question yesterday at the press conference, but he said there's a compromise.
He did say that. You know, that question came up yesterday. Why didn't someone put the zero up? And he said, well, honestly, once you're up and foiling and you're going upwind, you'd be a much slower boat with the Code Zero up. He said, yes, it helps you get on the foil. And yes, it's probably faster in a downwind situation like this and it would get you going. But the moment you start going upwind, it's draggy. You know, if you can foil upwind with a jib, you're always going to be faster than if you can foil upwind with the zero.
One thing that's interesting is Ineos might have found its condition right now. This sounds very sarcastic, but they've been quicker in displacement mode than New Zealand. Just saying. Too far?
American Magic. This is the race committee letting you know that your start will be postponed. The new time will be advised after the finish of race 1.
American Magic, copy. Thanks, Bill.
It's just worth noting that these races do have a 45-minute limit. We've just gone past the 30-minute mark. We are of the understanding that race number 2, the second sudden death semi-final between Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli and American Magic, will be delayed.
It's a very good point, because they're not even halfway down this run yet. And so potentially, if they don't get up and falling, they might not make the time limit.
Better to keep going this way, but
little depth for you. You got it there, Pete?
I think we got ages. Unless it's 45 from the start, then we need to finish within 15 minutes from now.
It'll be all of that to get there, I think.
Surprised they're not. Maybe they think they're going to make it. They just carry on like this.
How much wind speed you got?
9, almost 10. Surprised they're not trying to go for it.
We're going to pick them up here. They're not going to cross us. They're not across. No cross.
We're going to see a dial-up.
Down the boundary there.
That's Ben and Giles having a chat about they're going to dial them down here on starboard.
This is like the good old days, boys. Then we'll have a cup of tea and think about it. Oh, what are we going to do?
I have to stay about. Well, they're setting up. Here they come.
Ben's got him lined up with that bright orange pole. It looks like he's going to take his transom.
That'd be one way to get rid of the defender.
Boundary, boys.
After you, lads.
Anyway, 40 in and up.
Giles waving him through.
After you,
We're
lads.
going to have to turn here.
Alright, somebody, Trevor.
A little bit further.
Do you want all of us to win?
Emirates Team New Zealand bonding.
Tell you what, I'm glad I got the shorts on today.
Yeah.
Let me be blown a valve.
That's a great look at the foils, isn't it?
The near straight line of Emirates Team New Zealand, and then the antehedral of the Brits. That just shows that little shape difference, but there's all kinds of different things going on right now. How big the trim tabs are on each, how big that front foil section is on each. Also, how big, this appears to be the front section of the foil here. And then there's a very large trim tab on the back end. So it looks like the percentage of trim tab to the overall foil is more than 50-50. That's interesting in its own right. By the way, not a chance they're finishing this race on time.
You think?
Not a chance.
30 seconds to go. They're about a minute away.
They are just going to miss the finish line. Here comes the time limit expiration of 45 minutes.
Great station there, boys. Great station, please.
There it is.
I got flat.
Got my little canoe on thing.
That's good angle.
Race shots. This is the race committee. We have reached the time limit and will be terminating this race. We plan to retail this race after race 2. Stand by for further information.
So while our fair weather friends take a breather, let's take a quick look back at Emirates Team New Zealand's America's Cup journey. This is their 10th consecutive campaign. The lessons. Auckland, New Zealand has turned on a cracker of a day for the very first Prada Christmas race. Problem is, there's no wind, but that didn't stop our keen-eyed commentary team making some interesting observations. And as Ben Ainslie said, it's all about foils, man.
It's all about the foils. The foils above the water and foils, as we're going to talk about, below the water. And there is really clear differences, and we're going to come up with the obvious here. First of all, the obvious is the dihedral or straight or ahedral, and that is a straight foil there, and then what we were originally referring to is Y foils on all of the other boats. So Team New Zealand is very clearly the one boat that has broken out of this Y-shaped foil. Why? Well, there's all kinds of reasons, and Nathan's going to get into the rule here in a second and how all these foils have to fit within a so-called box. If we go to the other side, one thing to look at right now is there is a clear bullet shape on the Team New Zealand, and if we switch to the other tack, which we might be able to do, you see almost like a flat, almost like a duck bill on this side. These guys are running two separate different foils on one side and the other. Why would they do that? They're testing. They're trying to figure out which foil is better in what condition, which foil makes them more stable, which foil makes them faster in what condition. Now, they haven't seen a lot of breeze in this event so far, so this is going to be a lot of light air testing and effective testing, most likely.
So here's the rule that the teams have to work with. You can see that the most important bit, I guess, is the bottom. You've got a 4-metre span across the bottom, but that box there is where the teams can put the foil. So that's your Team New Zealand foil. It's straight, and this is what all the other teams have gone for, the Y foil. You look down, you can make it quite a big, large span. You can make it tapered. You could sweep it back. That's more like the Ineos foil with a swept back foil. And then you can put a bulb in here if you wanted to too, which is where you can put the lead. You know, these foils have got to be a certain weight. There's got to be all different features here. And so if you put the lead in there, this looked like, you know, there's so many different versions of foils that they can do here.
Back on the racecourse, the white flag was eventually flown. Mother Nature was declared the winner. And with no puff, the very first Prada Christmas race was cancelled.
Certainly a lost day, especially for this boat right now, because again, this is the final day. We keep harping on this, but I think it's super critical. The final day they get to sail against the challengers, and they needed all the time they possibly could against those other boats to get data and to hone their starting line sequence.
So that looks very much like Ineos Team UK may have called it a day. They may know something that we do not know. 6 p.m. cut-off time. No racing by 6 p.m. And the Christmas race is done and dusted with 3/4 of a race one done. So the Wind Grinch may have stolen the Christmas race, but there's plenty more action to come in the new year. The Prada Cup gets underway in January, and then it's game on. The battle for the Prada 36th America's Cup begins on the 6th of March.
One. Here we go.
Today's America's Cup Racing is brought to you by Spark.